Can marketing edit? Yeah. Okay. I can, but do some help. So you've talked about solving problems that are identified and having creative solutions to those. When we listened to Frederick Herron recently, he talked about having insight with creative questions. You have to ask for super creative questions to get to the problems to be solved. So when you think of how we're going to change medicine, who's going to ask those questions? How do we come to the decision about what even needs to be solved?
What I think is really interesting about the experience we've had here is we've taken different types of thinkers and brought them together. And so in the case of the Jump Arches program, we have engineers and clinicians working together. And I'm just always fascinated by the way these two different disciplines think. And when they come together, and they're each creative, and they're each thinking creative thoughts, and they're each very, very brilliant in developing ideas, but when they come together, they actually then have exponential new creative thoughts. And in its simplest form, I just look at all the things that are in biology. So simple biology. Engineers that we work with are looking at simple biology and the way the colors of light actually influence the way a flower appears. And it's fascinating and interesting, but it actually also can inform how a drug could be delivered at a key location in the body if a certain wavelength of light was illuminating that drug. The actual mechanism of the way the petals and the different types of colors are formed actually can tell us something about how a drug can be delivered and targeted on wavelength of light. Go figure. These ideas only come together as a clinician describes a problem. So I'm really trying to get this drug to this one little area of the body, and I don't want the rest of the body to be damaged because the drug is terribly toxic if it goes elsewhere. What can we use to solve for that? Oh, let's look at the flower.
So you think the combination of clinicians, physicians, and engineers are able to look at those kinds of problems better?
I think that it's not limited to these two particular disciplines. The idea that creatives within each discipline coming together have different thoughts is very valuable. So actually what we're doing here is we're trying to bring all kinds of alternative extra disciplines together, including industrial engineering, art and design, music. I mean, all of these things are coming together to solve for problems. And the fact is that until we can define what the problem is we're trying to solve, all these things exist, but people don't know that they have an application. And so it's really in that marriage that things happen.
So one of the futures of medicine, one of the aspects of the future of medicine is a very interdisciplinary, creative thought process about what the problems are and how to solve them.
I think that the only way to move medicine forward, we can continue to hammer away with our scientific process and model, et cetera, within our own discipline, and that will take a period of time. And certainly we have exponential growth and understanding. But I think we can really jumpstart that understanding by bringing in a multitude of different disciplines and how they think creatively and how they look at these problems, expose the problems to those different disciplines, and look for the most creative answers.
So that's a great how. That's a great kind of who's going to do the work and how it's going to get done. Now, and you've talked about one aspect of that, which might end up as drug delivery systems being more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any things on your radar that you think are really in the works to be true near future of medicine inventions or innovations that are going to change what happens importantly in medical science? And you can include talking about the 3D printing relationship to regenerative medicine. I think that's very interesting.
Right. I am truly fascinated by the concept of regenerative medicine because here we go back to the core biological system, and frankly, we didn't really understand it very well. Okay, but as we come to understand how things work, how one cell knows that it's adjacent to another cell, and how cell A needs to relate to cell B, and cell B actually needs to be a little slightly different than cell A, and in a new way, a new direction. Like I'm an inside cell, I'm an outside cell. All the chemical markers, all the signaling, and all that other stuff we've started to come to understand. And this, with the idea that if you took those cells and you pushed adult cells back to their formative zone, where they have every potential in the world, then you put them in a scaffolding and you train them, they actually become a tissue that functions. It's truly miraculous, and it's based in science, and it's terribly fascinating, and it requires people who think differently about medicine, people who think differently about structures and engineering and 3D printing and how can you print these scaffolding, and you have to do it at a micro level. Just love this. It's a confluence of all these great ideas.
How real is that? We just heard from Dr.
Super real.
Vacanti last week. He's doing this work. Other people are doing this
Yeah.
work. Talk about how real that is in terms of
Sure.
time and
Sure.
body parts.
So I'll make this a little personal. So I did 4 years of bench research as an undergraduate at my university before I went to medical school. And I was chained to the lab, and I was in the business of trying to figure out how one cell of a terribly disinteresting type of multicellular organism could differentiate and become a different type of cell over time. I'd spent 4 years in this lab, and it was only in the last year that I suddenly realized what it is we were studying. It was the composition of the proteins and sugars on the surfaces of the cells that we were studying and their interactions to show one cell what to do when it's next to this other cell. The ideas have existed for decades. We are truly on the cusp of being able to make this happen. I really see this happening not just in my lifetime, but actually perhaps in the very near future, where instead of having to transplant live organs from one person to another, we're actually creating the organs functionally and actually moving people forward without having to have the tragedy of a death. I mean, this idea of regenerative medicine is exceptionally powerful. It's based on things we've understood for a lot of years, sort of, and now we've actually come to a certain maturity of understanding that we can actually make it happen. So I really do think it is going to happen.
What are some of the reasons that we can't rely on transplant medicine, on traditional transplant?
Well put by a speaker at Jump, Dr. Vacanti. This idea of what we're trying to do is overcome a shortage. So there's a shortage of organs, and our solution to the shortage of organs is to continue to harvest efficiently. Well, and create databases, certainly, to do matching. Well, what if, and I love the what if question, so what if instead of the rate limiting step of having a transplant occur successfully, if it wasn't the availability of an organ that had a good match, and it was just the speed to build scaffolding and put cells on the scaffolding and get those organs to grow, it would totally transform transplant medicine. Totally. And of course, they're your own cells. So there's no rejection medicine, there's no infection. This is just breakthrough.
Jump Simulation and the Peoria Riverfront Museum have some similarities in that there are a lot of young people who come through both of these organizations and see really cool things. And it's very easy for a well-developed institution to present themselves to young people and say, this is what we're doing, isn't this cool? But I think both of you, both Jump and the Riverfront Museum, both understand that inspiring curiosity is part of that. How do you guys do that here to talk about the people you bring through here, the young people, what age groups, and what kinds of things do you do at Jump Simulation to help them think creatively in a way that doesn't just answer already known questions?
Absolutely. So at the core, both the museum and Jump take a look at what is the inspirational message we want to bring. There are tons of cool things around, but if we don't understand what those cool things are and how we relate to them, they're just cool things. They're things other people do, things that really smart people somewhere else do. And here at Jump, and I believe at the museum, the whole idea is that, no, kid, you actually can do this too. Yeah, you have to work hard, you have to apply yourself, you have to think creatively, but you can also do that. Our methodology includes bringing in teachers and experts to tell us what the age-appropriate messages are. So we take a big idea and we chunk it into digestible components. We don't dumb it down, okay? Really wild, cool, complex things are really wild, cool, and attractive for that reason, but we make them relevant. And then we put the kids' hands on them in some way, something that they can build or do on their own with their capabilities. That, I think, is the thing. Because what we're doing is we're saying, that's the future vision, that's where you can go, and this is your component part, and then I'm going to show you how you can do something today that gets you just one step further towards that future vision.
you think that gets them to ask the questions that we don't already know how to ask, or that we don't even know to ask?
I've seen kids come into the jump lab and look at something that we're trying to describe and just immediately get it and immediately say something that's just truly brilliant, like, well, why wouldn't you do it this way? Or why couldn't it be upside down? You know? And I've had the moment where some, out of the mouth of babes, kind of a moment where somebody comes up with something and all of a sudden we say, you know what, we should really try that because kids maybe got a good idea. I love those moments. They do come, and frankly, it's because they don't know, they haven't been trained yet that, like, what are the wrong ideas, right? So much of our growth is like, that was right, this is wrong, that's the wrong way to think about it. They don't have that, so it's a green field every time.
As I listen to you, it's interesting that this is a place where young people can come and learn to be creative and learn to think and be exposed to something that looks just like a place in their own backyard, but really is a world-class innovation center. And same with the museum. It's a very interesting and unusual place that doesn't really exist anywhere else. If we can get local kids to come here and see that, that makes it clearer to them that we're not just a local institution. We happen to be a national or internationally important institution that's in their own backyard. And I think that we need to think of those kids in the same way. Every kid who comes through is a kid from a school program or a kid for a summer camp, when in fact maybe that's the kid who's going to ask the question.
So it's absolutely the case that everyone came from somewhere. So some of the most brilliant people who go on perhaps to the places that we consider the top, you know, the Ivy League, et cetera, you know, Harvard and MIT and Stanford, they'll come from somewhere. Why not here? And I think the difference about the why not here is to show people the potential. And I think one of the messages of the museum and of Jump is that cool things are happening right here. You could be a part of them. You can grow and you can stretch. And if you grow and stretch and you're constantly pursuing some higher vision, you can get there. Okay?
Or maybe here is there.
Maybe here is there.